Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for returning for another segment of Health Professional Radio. We'll be speaking with Colleen Acosta this morning, CEO and co-founder of Freya Biosciences. It's a biotech company dedicated to advancing women's reproductive health. She's going to talk about the critical needs facing women's health care and the complexities of reproductive health for families and individuals worldwide. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Colleen Acosta. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell us a bit about your background and what led you to co-found Freya Biosciences.
Yeah, thanks very much. So I have a background in epidemiology. I'm a perinatal epidemiologist by training. And I've always been kind of fascinated by the impact that microbes have on human health. So I was really lucky to do my PhD at the University of Oxford in the UK with some world-leading experts in this area. And was really focusing in on how pathogens in the reproductive tract are associated with poor outcomes of pregnancy. So from there, I kind of went. I always have this view. I have a background in public health and global health. Went to work for the World Health Organization after that, and had some incredibly rewarding years. First working on tuberculosis, and then transitioned over to the emergencies response team at WHO, and that kind of led me to all corners of the globe, working on many different outbreaks, Ebola, Zika virus, cholera, among others. But it was actually the first part of COVID that two of my fellow co-founders that I knew back from Stanford days where I did my undergrad approached me for this idea for Freya. And they were the ones with the original idea. One is now our current chief scientific officer. And the more I got to know about this idea about microbial immunotherapies, which is what we're working on at Freya, it really occurred to me that this could be just a game changer for women's health. So, it's from those first few conversations, it just became kind of plain to me that the novel approach that Freya is using to develop these new therapeutics can just have a huge impact on lives all over the world, women's lives all over the world. So it was really a no-brainer to kind of come into the co-founding team back in 2020, and now this is where we are today. So really thrilled with the progress that we've made in progressing our first candidate towards this effect.
Microbial immunotherapies. Describe this type of therapy in a bit more detail. How does it work and how does it differ from other immunotherapies?
Yeah, thanks. So microbial immunotherapies are essentially communities of microorganisms, and these are mainly bacteria, and these work to prompt immune system changes that then confer a health benefit. So we then develop out these microbial communities into drug products for specific conditions. So at Freya, we're pioneering this new class of microbial immunotherapies, specifically for targeting the reproductive tract. And we're looking at the reproductive tract microbiome. So that's the entire community of microbes that women have in their reproductive tracts. And we're looking at that because there's quite a lot of evidence, to demonstrate the correlation between the type of microbiome that women have and underlying inflammation that then leads to various indications in women's health. So how our immunotherapies differ, most people, when they think of immunotherapies, they think of their role in cancer treatment and certain immune-related disorders. So there's various classes of these types of immunotherapies. Many people are familiar with checkpoint inhibitors or monoclonal antibodies. Freya's immunotherapies work a bit differently. Ours work by replacing or significantly shifting the entire microbiome, and thereby also shifting the local immunology in the reproductive tract that, again, underpins these indications that we're looking at as our first target.
What is one of the main conditions in women's health care that you are focusing on?
Yeah, so it turns out that inflammation underlies quite a number of different indications. The first one that we're looking at is embryo implantation failure in IVF. So that's in vitro fertilization. There's quite a lot of evidence demonstrating this link between underlying inflammation and IVF success or failure. Others are preterm birth, infertility and endometriosis, and we are a platform company, so there's a number of different indications that seem to stem from, at least in part, from this underlying inflammatory profile. So these are some of the indications that we're going for first. Our first, as I mentioned, being IVF failure.
FB101, I understand that's your investigational vaginal microbial immunotherapeutic. How does that work, and why did you choose this particular compound?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, FB101 is our first generation investigational drug candidate to improve pregnancy success in IVF. So as I mentioned, there's been several studies that have indicated that dysbiosis, or essentially a pro-inflammatory bacteria in the reproductive tract, leads to immune activation and inflammation that negatively affects IVF success. So there's been quite a lot of evidence generated looking at the difference in IVF success rates and women's microbiomes. And there's quite a stark comparison or disparity, and, rates being much higher, rates of IVF success being much higher in women who have a healthy microbiome versus women who have this dysbiotic microbiome. So the evidence is quite strong now, it's quite robust, this link between the microbiome dysbiosis and pregnancy success in IVF. So that's what led us to target this particular indication first for FB101. So FB101, we're really excited about this therapeutic candidate, and it has the potential for becoming the first targeted therapy for the IVF population with vaginal dysbiosis.
With so many unmet needs in women's health care, are there any areas where pharma is currently excelling here in the United States in women's health?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been great strides in the pharma industry. I think there's been a focus on hormonal therapeutics, and there's kind of this renewed or new recognition that there's other underlying mechanisms in the biology of these indications that we're targeting. But I think, I'm not an expert in the pharma industry, but I think from my perspective, there's been quite a number of areas that the pharma industry has excelled. There's areas like contraception. There's a variety of different contraceptions now available, oral contraceptives, hormonal patches, injections, etc. I think also osteoporosis treatment, breast cancer treatment. This is a significant concern, obviously, for women around the world. And I think the pharma industry has made quite significant strides in this area with targeted therapies, such as HER2 inhibitors and selective estrogen receptor modulators, for example. There's also vaccinations. I think, the HPV vaccine is reducing rates of cervical cancer around the world, and that's that vaccine plays a central role in, for example, the World Health Organization's global elimination initiative for the disease. So these are just some areas that I see that the pharma industry has made great strides over the last couple of years.
What's next for your company, and what do you see as your research pipeline? How is it going to develop?
Yeah, so what's next for Freya is that, when we succeed in our mission to develop and bring these new microbial immunotherapies to market, this can be a game changer for women's health. So, we have our first candidate. We've just announced the top-line readouts for FB101, or positive top-line readouts for FB101. And we have a proprietary method for selecting our next-generation strain-based consortia products that we hope to put into trials over the next couple of years and bring those to market. So, as I said, when we can bring these new therapeutics to market, this can really, I think, be a game changer in women's health. From, the indications that we're working in at Freya are areas where there's really no therapeutics or very, very few therapeutics available. So this is something that's our mission to bring to women and make these therapeutics available as soon as possible to women.
Give us a website where we can learn more.
Yes, if you want to learn more about Freya, you can check us out at www.freyabiosciences.com.
And that's FREYABIO Sciences.com, correct?
That's correct. Yes, thanks.
Colleen, I appreciate your time this morning. I'm hoping that you'll come back and tell us how things are going with FB101 and all of your other endeavors as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Looking forward to it, and thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Colleen Acosta. Audio copies of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au, also at Anchor, Spotify, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.